Good evening, everyone. I'm James Horvath and your 2023 president for AIA Las Vegas chapter. I'm very excited to welcome everyone tonight for our second member meeting of the year. This month, we have a presentation that's been put together by the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee for AIA Las Vegas. Before I get to some introductions, I would first like to thank our evening sponsors. Tonight is brought to us membership through the sponsorship of our visionary sponsors, Bergman Walls and Associates, Clyde Juba Wald, Knit Studios, and TJK Consulting Engineers. Tonight's meeting is also sponsored by KME Architects, who through a generous donation allowed us to bring our guest here tonight. KME Architects is a full-service architectural firm with offices here in Las Vegas, Atlanta, Fort Worth, and Guam. The Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee is co-chaired by two individuals, Mel Green and Sydney Katz. At this time, I'd like to introduce and turn the presentation over to Tori Liggins, who will introduce tonight's speaker.
Or if you don't mind muting your line. Sorry, folks, we're having some technical issues. Apologies, folks. It looks like we're having some technical issues, so we are going to wait a quick minute while Tori gets back on so that you can introduce our speaker tonight.
Sorry about that. I think something was wrong with my computer audio. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Great. All right. So my name is Tori Liggins. I'll be introducing our speaker today. Janet Ireland lives in Los Angeles, where she is an assistant professor in the Department of Art and Art History at Occidental College. Her photographic work is primarily concerned with the themes of family, home, and the expression of Black identity in American culture. In 2016, she began photographing structures designed by legendary Black architect Paul R. Williams. In a collection of 250 of these photographs was published in a monograph entitled Regarding Paul R. Williams, a Photographer's View. In 2021, Ireland was awarded Peter E. Paul Research Fellowship by the Nevada Museum of Art to photograph Williams' work in Nevada. A solo exposition of this work opened in the Nevada Museum of Art in 2022 and traveled to the Nevada State Museum in Las Vegas, where it will be on view until May 30th, 2023. A broad selection of Ireland's work was included in the exhibition family album. Danielle Bowman, Jana Ireland, and contemporary works from LACMA at the Los Angeles County Museum of Arts Charles White Elementary School's gallery. Ireland's photographs are held in the permanent collection of institutions including LACMA, the Nevada Museum of Art, the California African American Museum, and Santa Barbara Museum of Art, and the Museum of Contemporary Photography at Columbia College, Chicago. Her work has been the subject of articles in publications including the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, Harvard Design Magazine, and Aperture. She holds a MFA from UCLA Department of Art and a BFA from the Department of Photography and Imaging at NYU.
Thank you for that introduction, Tori. Hi, everyone. My name is Jana Ireland. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about this particular body of work that I have on view in Nevada right now, and also tell you a little bit more about the exhibition itself. So I should mention before I start that this project has a long history before I began talking about the work that I did in Nevada. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that work first, and then jump into some of the work that I did in your lovely state. This, of course, is a photograph of Paul Revere Williams. I'm sure most, if not all of you, know a little bit about his history, some basic biographical facts, but just to make sure that everyone has some context, he was the first Black member of your amazing organization, American Institute of Architects, as well as the first Black AIA fellow, and the first Black recipient of the AIA Gold Medal, which he did not receive until 2017, which was many years after his death in 1980. He practiced for 50 years. He began working in other architecture offices in the late 19-teens and then opened his own practice in 1923 and retired in 1973. This is a picture from one of the first Paul R. Williams homes that I photographed in Los Angeles, which is the city where I live now and where Williams lived for all of his life and where he made most of his buildings. I'm choosing to open with this image because Williams is so well known for his grand curved staircases. And this seemed like a really excellent example of this thing that he is so well known for doing. Here is yet another really terrific staircase. I have many of them in my body of work, only showing you a couple here today. And here is an example of one of those really beautiful striking curves that he often built into his work. This example is from a ceiling in one of the first Williams homes that I visited, which is actually around the corner from the house that Williams built for himself and his wife in the 1950s. Here's another thing that I find a lot in buildings Williams designed. In addition to those really beautiful, graceful, sensuous curves, there's also a lot of interesting things going on with lines and angles, with the way that different corners of a room fit together. So a lot of my project was really highlighting those aspects of his work. I think that in architectural photography, at least for all of you being architects, what is most useful to you in terms of having your work photographed is probably being able to get a really good view of a whole room or a whole section of a room, so that a client or just someone who appreciates your work can kind of get a sense of what the space looks like as a whole, how it can be used, But what I decided to do in focusing on Williams's work was really find ways to look at that work itself and not be looking also at a couch that's in the room or a rug or carpet or even a particular color of paint or kind of wallpaper. And instead making these kind of simple black and white photographs that are really focused on these little parts of a room and the way light hits these different parts of the room at different times of the day. This is a photograph of the front of Williams's own house. It probably looks quite a bit different today, not different in that it's been changed, but different in that it has been cleaned up some. At the time that I made this photograph, the house had recently been sold and was about to be renovated. So what has been happening for the last few years since this sale from Williams's family to this current owner was made is that things that have gone wrong in the house, such as a crack in the foundation, are being fixed or have been fixed. And now the next step is to photograph what's been done, photograph the updated version of the building, but this is what it looked like before. For about 2 years, 2.5 years, there was a fence up around the house, and people would come to me and say, there's a fence around his house. What are they doing? What are they doing? And I would have to say, I know the homeowner and I know the architect, and I know that their intentions are really good. And what they are trying to do is get the house back into the shape that he intended it to be in. And this house, of course, is full of some of these really beautiful curves and lines that I was just talking about a minute ago. And something else I will note about this house is that Williams is so well known for these revivalist styles, these homes that recall sort of grand traditional European architectural styles. But his own home is much more modern. It's in the international style. So I think of this home as an opportunity to not only build something really tailored to himself and to his wife in their life after their children had moved out as people who now had all this free time to entertain, but showing that he was kind of with the times, that he understood what was going on in architecture and was in fact capable of making more modern work. And it was really that his clients were dictating that he continue to work in these revivalist styles. Kind of a theory I have about what he was interested in personally. Here's another detail from his house. I love the way that he uses texture, and I love finding opportunities to look at texture changing from room to room, whether that is in the ceiling, like here, or in a change in flooring, for example. And there are also some really intriguing examples of textures that are unique, continuing from one room to another, or continuing from inside to outside. And this is a detail from his home that I really love, this little W for Williams. Another example of a more modern structure he designed in Los Angeles is Founders Church of Religious Science, which some of you may have seen if you've ever driven around Los Angeles and through Koreatown. Here is another example of a more public-facing Williams structure. This is the Al Jolson Memorial is the structure that you can see through the doors, and the structure that I was actually standing inside is the Hillside Memorial Park Mausoleum. So Williams designed both the mausoleum and the memorial for Al Jolson that's out there. And then out beyond the memorial, you might see some tiny little cars. That's actually the 405. So this is an example of a structure, or actually two structures that he designed in Los Angeles that people pass by all the time and may not really be aware of. Another thing that I did in working on this project in Los Angeles was begin to look at structures that have either been destroyed through some sort of accident or destroyed willfully. Here is an example of a house that was in a canyon in Malibu and burned down during wildfires in 1982, wildfires that were deliberately set But of course, this particular house wasn't the intended target, it's just a casualty. This is a home in Beverly Hills that was illegally demolished a few summers ago. So when I photographed it, it was through the fence that was in front, and it was at this moment where the facade had been demolished, but the city had caught things in time before the entire building was destroyed. So the building was left in this kind of limbo. And here's another structure that was illegally demolished. I don't know what the rules are in Nevada, but something that happens in Los Angeles is that the fines for demolishing a house that you're not supposed to, so that you can then put something else up in its place, are much smaller than you would think they would be. So there are a lot of cases where people would rather just pay the fine than fight with the city, fight with the neighbors, and try to do everything, follow all the steps they're supposed to do to build something else. And something really intriguing that has happened in the years that I've been working on this project is that it's become harder and harder to do this with a Paul Williams house. I began working on this project. I started the research in the summer of 2016, but I photographed the first house in December of 2016, which is the same month it was announced that he was being awarded the 2017 AIA gold medal. So my project has been really in parallel to all of these other things that have been going on with his legacy and kind of the revitalization of his reputation. And in, let's see, in what year would that have been? 2018, I received a commission from a magazine based in Atlanta called Art Papers to travel to Nevada to make a little mini series on some of his work in Las Vegas. So here are some photographs from the Berkeley Square neighborhood in Las Vegas. This is a neighborhood of homes that he designed for Black families in the early 1950s. LA has this really deep history of redlining and housing discrimination and all these other things. And I know in Nevada and in Las Vegas, there's another history of those things going on. So these homes were designed for people who needed a place to live and didn't really have anywhere else that they could go. And this is a neighborhood that has been kept in really excellent condition and is still viewable in much the same state it would have been in back in the 1950s. People are still living in these homes and taking care of them. Another structure that I photographed during that trip was the Guardian Angel Cathedral, which Mo Dalis had Williams design for his Catholic casino employees. If you ever get a chance to go into the Guardian Angel Cathedral, please do. One of my favorite details about this building is that all of the art in it, which is mosaics and stained glass designed by the Pixic sisters who lived in Los Angeles, are actually gambling themed. Because of course it's for people who work in casinos. Another structure I photographed during that trip was this one, which is the former lobby of the La Concha Motel and is now the lobby of the Neon Museum. So it was picked up and moved from its original location and now sits where the Neon Museum is and is the structure that welcomes you to the museum. In 2020, I published a book of these photographs regarding Paul R. Williams, A Photographer's View. And around the time that this book came out, I began my contact with the Nevada Museum of Art. A year prior to that, Carmen Beals, who's now a curator at the Nevada Museum of Art, but was then working for the Nevada State Museum, found my photographs from that trip to Las Vegas and wanted to do a project for the Clark County School District using some of the photographs. And that project fell in touch, but we stayed in touch. And then in 2020, the museum offered me the Peter E. Poole Research Fellowship to continue my work photographing Paul R. Williams's existing projects in Nevada. what? Sorry. So here are a few more from the Guardian Angel Cathedral, which I returned to, not to photograph, but for various reasons. Like we filmed part of a PBS special there, for example. So for that first part of the project in Southern California, I was doing the research, I was doing the legwork, I was finding people who owned the Williams homes or who were managing the more public structures and arranging visits and going and photographing them. But for this part of the project, I was able to work with Carmen, who became the curator of the exhibition, with Clay T. White, who is a historian who works for UNLV, and another historian named Alicia Barber, who's also based in Nevada, and Brooke Hodge, who's based here in California. So they together did quite a bit of research on this project and began looking into his history in the state of Nevada in a way that I would not have been able to do on my own. And what that freed me to do was just travel to Nevada whenever I could schedule a trip and photograph more and more buildings. One of the structures that I photographed on one of those trips is this home, which Williams designed for the millionaire E.L. Cord. Williams designed a home for Cord here in the Los Angeles area. And then when Cord purchased this property in Nevada, he hired Williams to design his home there. And here are just a few things from the house. So here's another place where I'm really thinking about materials and thinking about the difference in the use of materials between somewhere like Los Angeles and somewhere like here, Central Nevada. So you wouldn't see knotty pine like this, or like you'll see in some other photographs in one of his homes in Beverly Hills or La Cañada Flint Ridge, or one of the other well-to-do neighborhoods here in Los Angeles. Here's another. Again, I'm always trying to figure out how a room comes together, thinking about how he designed his corners, how all of the little parts of a room fit together. And here is another detail from that home he built for E.L. Cord, which was called the Circle L Ranch, and which is still called the Circle L Ranch. It's no longer in the Cord family, but is in fact still a working ranch. Something that I heard about a lot in my research for Williams was his use of innovative materials, his interest in being forward thinking in terms of how the buildings he designed were constructed. And I think a really great example of that is the El Reno apartments, which were these Lee steel structures made with Williams's design that were set down in one place on a lot in Reno. And then later, when the owner no longer wanted to deal with all of these apartments, wanted to do something else with the land, because of the steel construction, all of these apartment buildings, which are really more like small homes and apartments, were just picked up and moved to other places in the city, sold to other people. So they're now being used in lots of different ways. This one here in this photograph is kind of like a museum. No one lives there, but the people who are in charge of it try to find period appropriate furniture and also do some office work out of a structure that's attached to it. Another one is a bar and restaurant. Others are homes that are well kept. Others are in great need of some repair. So one project that Carmen and the other researchers did was tracking down as many of these structures as they could. I believe there are originally 15 of these, and they've tracked down maybe about 12 of them. The majority of them have been located. Another detail. So they all have these really great windows and a few other little details that make them really easily recognizable from the street if you know what to look for. Another structure that I spent some time in Reno is this, which was originally the first church of Christ Scientists and is now more popularly known as the Lear Theater. It's a structure that has kind of struggled over the years. In the 90s, the congregation that was there for a long time moved to another structure. And since then, it has been difficult to find a tenant who can take proper care of the property. It's right across the street from a river. So, for example, a tech company would have a hard time moving into this space because the basement could flood. There are just lots of issues like that. But it's a structure that a lot of people in the city of Reno are really proud of and would really love to see come to some, be used in a productive way. So here's some more from the theater. And a few more. So you can see that it's pretty structurally sound, but needs some love, needs to be cleaned up. And something else that came out of the research is that in addition to the Berkeley Square neighborhood, there was a separate nearby neighborhood called Highland Square, which was also full of these homes designed by Williams for Black families in the 1950s. Another structure is the Lovelock Inn, which is in Lovelock, Nevada. A few more from the inn here. The only time I actually photographed a person in one of these buildings is I photographed the new owner of the Lovelock Inn, and it did not make it into the show at the Nevada Museum because, of course, it's supposed to be so focused on the architecture, but I'm really glad that I have a photograph of him. There's that nodding pine again on the ceiling. And here is another. This is a home designed for a woman named Luella Garvey, who moved to Nevada for a divorce and ended up liking it and wanting to stay. So she hired Williams to design her house. And later she was deeply involved in the project of getting the first Church of Christ Scientists built. So she was someone who was definitely a fan of his. This structure is now being used as a live-in home for teenagers with eating disorders. And the day that Carmen and I visited, we did not actually have a contact, and we just showed up to photograph the outside. But we ended up running into someone who worked there, who was then able to call the person currently managing the building and let us in. And we were very lucky that we got in right before the work to make it habitable for these teenagers was done, which meant that no one was actually living there. And we were able to spend an afternoon just kind of wandering around making photographs. And a really neat detail in this house is this grand staircase, which more than anything else I photographed in Nevada feels like it would have been very much at home in Los Angeles. this is one that I can definitely tie to the work that I've been doing here for all of these years. And this staircase is a big part of why. Another detail from this house. Putting Reno at the center of the world. This structure was originally a single family home. Well, actually more complicated than that. It was a home that 3 different people lived in, a married couple and one of their brothers. But now it is known as Rancho San Rafael. So it is a park area that people can visit at any time. And then in this structure, the home itself, events are held, things like weddings take place. Another. And this is one of the very first, I think it was the first structure I photographed actually after getting the fellowship and coming out to Nevada for the first time on that fellowship. So there are places where you can really see it as a home, and then places that are sort of more municipal, or places that speak more to it as a structure that has a different use now. Like that carpeting, for example, or the little plaque up on the top of the door frame. More from this house, the former Herman House, now Rancho San Rafael. And something special that I was able to do through this project is return to the La Concha Motel and actually photograph more of it, photograph the lobby as it is from the inside. At the time that I visited, I was only able to photograph it from the outside. And the Neon Museum has become something of a partner in this work. So here is the inside of that lobby building as it looks today. And one of my favorite images from the entire Nevada leg of the project, which is this one of the light coming through those windows pretty early in the morning and creating this triangle shape. On Saturday, the 18th, just a few days ago, which was Williams's birthday, I returned to the La Concha lobby and was part of a ceremony where a proclamation was issued naming February 18th, Paul Revere Williams Day in Nevada going forward. So look forward to celebrating Williams and talking about Williams on the 18th in the future. And it was also issued the certificate of special congressional recognition. It says, in recognition of your work to highlight and honor the importance and legacy of Paul Revere Williams and his work in Nevada. Thank you for your dedication to the arts, education, and history. So that was just a few days ago. You are welcome to visit the Nevada State Museum. The project that I did in Nevada is now on view there and will be until May. You can see those details here. Please do go see it. It's work that I'm really proud of. And if you are interested in the photographs, the research, Williams himself, the Nevada Museum of Art, the original home of this project, set up a special website called legacyrevered.org, where you can look at the photographs, you can read the essays. Just go to it for a minute. See if it will let me do it. Ignore. Okay. Here. So you can look around and learn more about different aspects of the project and Williams's life and his connection to the state of Nevada. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I think that was an excellent presentation. Paul Revere Williams has always been a idol of mine, so I really appreciate that. Sydney, do you have a couple of questions for Jonna?
Yes, I do. And Jonna, thank you for all the work that you've been putting in towards Paul Williams. It's been a long time coming for us to recognize his work here, especially here in Las Vegas. So I just have just two quick questions for you. So Paul's work in Nevada is truly unique, including the Guardian Angel Cathedral, La Concha Motel, and several residential developments, Carver Park in Henderson and Berkeley Square in West Las Vegas as well. What are your thoughts on his work here in Southern Nevada?
I think that his work in Southern Nevada just shows more of this incredible range that he had. He was someone who was, as I mentioned earlier, designing private homes in all of these different styles, which was something that made him marketable. It's something that helped make him successful as this Black architect, working at a time when there were not other Black architects, to make him someone who, a person who wanted any kind of project could hire. And then moving into projects for the city, moving into projects for families at different income levels, not just the wealthy families, moving into public housing and all of these different kinds of things that he was able to do. And then Nevada seems like, because of the variety of the structures in Nevada, his work there seems like a great summary of the things that he could do. You have a couple of churches in very different styles. You have homes in very different styles. And then you have the ways in which those structures are being used now and preserved or not preserved to consider.
Thank you for your response. My second question is, what do you think, what was it about Paul Williams that gravitated him towards celebrities, hiring him as their architect, especially or particularly in Southern California?
Someone I was on a panel with the other night put it in a way that I thought was really spectacular. She said something like, that Williams's homes taught people what they wanted. It taught people what a celebrity's home in California was supposed to look like, what glamour was supposed to look like. Can you repeat the second part of the question, just to make sure I'm answering it fully?
Well, particularly in Southern California, essentially, why do you think he was hired by famous clients and celebrities?
One of the things that he had going for him living in Los Angeles was that people in the entertainment industry would on average have been more liberal than people in another city working in another industry. So he had more, I would say, more people willing to hire him in Southern California, and many of those people were people in the entertainment industry, because what he demonstrated that he could do so well early in his career was these really grand homes.
Very good. Thank you so much, Shanna.
We really appreciate your effort and your presentation. If there's anything that we can do from the JEDI committee, just let us know.
Thank you. I really
Sure.
appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me to be here this evening.
Absolutely. So at this time, we would like to start our panel discussion. And I would like to introduce two of our panelists. We have, and I'm going to be reading his extensive bio, but I'm going to condense it. We have Mr. Winston Henderson. He has more than 30 years experience in architecture and planning and holds an architecture degree from Carnegie Mellon University. Mr. Henderson holds registrations in Nevada, California, Arizona, and Alaska. He has extensive experience in design, programming, facility planning, and contract administration. Prior to establishing Winston Henderson Architect, Mr. Henderson served as an associate architect planner with the design subsidiary of Walt Disney Production in Los Angeles, California. His dedication to client satisfaction is guided by the principle of integrity and excellence. Welcome, Mr. Henderson.
Good evening.
Hey, Winston, how are you?
Doing
Winston,
well.
Fantastic. Winston and I go way back. We designed our first building together in 1995. Thanks for attending, Winston. We also have Kelvin Haywood. Kelvin Haywood attended Ball State University and UNLV for undergrad and obtained his Master's of Architecture degree from UNLV. He's a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force Reserve, where he was the commander of the 931st Civil Engineering Unit in Wichita, Kansas. Kelvin received numerous awards while employed in Afghanistan and Iraq. Kelvin is past president, owner, and partner in previous architecture firm. He has completed designs in Las Vegas, Korea, Canada, South Africa, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Welcome, Kelvin. And Kelvin and I used to own a company together. So I'm really glad to have you as one of our panelists. So
Absolutely.
Cynthia, oh, perfect. So Cynthia, I want to turn it over to you for as our moderator.
Try and get better light.
Thank you, Melvin. Hi, Kelvin. Hi, Winston. So my first question for whoever wants to answer first, a trailblazing Black architect, how did Paul R. Williams influence you architecturally?
Okay, I'll jump on that one. I became aware of Mr. Williams very early in my career. I have a brother who was working on a doctorate's degree at UCLA and did his doctoral work on Mr. Williams. So I became very familiar with him. And I was always impressed by his perseverance and just the notion, at the turn of the century that he would go into architecture had to be just such a daring and definitive sort of decision to make and to do at that time. And for him to not only enter the profession, but to thrive and do well, I always admired that. And aside from loving his designs and what I came to feel were the Jetsons, the interpretation of the Jetsons sort of architecture into reality. I always admired his perseverance as a business person and just being able to thrive in the industry of architecture.
Winston, I totally agree. For me, it's like you said, it's perseverance and it's determination because practicing architecture back then, during the various barriers that he had to overcome, it's similar situations that have happened to me in my profession. I'm sure you have in Kelvin as well. And so to have someone who's a role model, who was a genius, had grace and elegance, and his interpretation of his design and his client was totally unprecedented. And so for me, it was an inspiration to say, hey, as an architect, I can achieve that as well. So I totally agree with you because you have to have discipline. you have to be persistent and you have to take a no in order to, but do it in such a way that you're not bitter about all of the things that have happened to you, but you do understand that there's things that are going to happen. Is how you adapt to them mentally.
Thank you, gentlemen. For the next question, perhaps Kelvin could give us his answer first. How does it feel to know that Paul Williams was the first Black architect to become a member of the American Institute of Architects in 1923 and in 1957 when he was inducted as the AIA's first Black fellow?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. I think for me, it was more of feeling a proud moment, if you would, just because, you know, as Mel and Winston mentioned, you know, going through college and probably being the lonely onlys, right? Throughout, you see them shaking their head throughout your, you know, throughout our careers, to know that, you know, this gentleman, Mr. Williams, was finally recognized, to know that his work meant something. You know, from a young age, we weren't necessarily encouraged that way, but to see him, his body of work be recognized by the AIA, to me, that was just, I was very proud of that, knowing that happened and knowing that I could aspire to actually achieve something like that.
Thank you for your response. Winston, would you like to answer this next question? What do you think of Paul Williams's work? Sorry. What do you think of his work's influences on the present and future generations in architecture?
Well, it sort of ties into the first question. I think his largest influence is certainly as an inspiration, hopefully to other Black, female, and a wide variety of people who are interested in going into the practice of architecture. And it certainly, I think, is a great introduction to young people who are considering architecture, to look at his life, look at his body of work, look at where he has practiced and where his projects have been. You know, pretty impressive that they're both in Southern California and here in Nevada. And I think that gives a pretty good impression and pretty good interpretation of what it means to be an architect. And many young people don't realize, they hear the term architect, oh, I'd like to be an architect. What does an architect do? And you look at his body of work and the different types of projects, from residential and then into commercial and casino work, and at the LA airport, just such a varied practice. It's an inspirational variety and skill set and just overall career work that just inspires young people.
If you don't mind, I'd like to jump in on that, and only because I was blessed enough to be asked to be a juror for UNLV's fourth year students this past week. I think it was last week, and I think it's incumbent on us to keep his name alive, to talk about that body of work, to talk about the type of materials that he used in the media that he had on hand, because now everything is computer generated, right? And so I was able to talk to some of these young aspiring architects, male, female, Black, white, Hispanic. It spanned the the gender and race roles. But I think it's incumbent on us as we go out and talk to young people about architecture, to talk about his work, use some of his work as an example, in a way to, again, tie the old to the new, to let them know that there are other media that you can use to create beautiful work. Not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be on the computer generated. To learn how to, I don't even know if they have lettering classes anymore, and how to actually
I don't think so.
write, how your hand writing would look on a drawing, and people could clearly read it versus typing something in. So just to add a little bit to that question, I think it's incumbent on us to push his legacy, and to tie his legacy that sort of from the past, and tie it to the future.
And not only that, I think for his adaptability, because a lot of times our youth don't have the ability to adapt. And I think it's so important to be able to adapt, so that you're able to take the problems that you have and be able to redirect them in a more positive way. And I think with his adaptability in terms of being able to draw upside down, to me, that was very fascinating. I barely can sketch, just, sketching. So for him to be able to do that, to understand also people, understand his clients. So I think that is a testament of his genius. And how Kelvin mentioned about materials, and how he used the light, how he used his intuition in understanding his clients. So I think all of those things are things that our youth need to learn and to understand as well.
And Sydney, I'd also say that this program tonight is a great example of what I love to see and hope to see more of. And I think that the very problem with Mr. Williams being almost unknown outside of a small circle of Black architects in the general public, he's not particularly famous at all or known at all. And most architectural students don't know who he is. And this sort of magnifies the problem that we have for others to enter the profession, is that you look around, and when you're not aware that there are others like you who are going into this profession, it doesn't occur to you that it's an option that's available to you. So certainly having him get as much light as possible, as much publicity as possible, is a great thing for our youth moving forward.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, you're very, very correct about us, architecture students, just simply not being aware of ethnic, especially Black architects. And I just thank you for your response, Winston. I'm going to move to the next question now. So Paul Williams found a way to work around racial barriers because he had an ultimate goal in mind. He believed that for every home and every commercial building that he could not buy and that he could not live in, he was opening doors for the next generation. How will you continue his legacy of opening doors for our younger generation aspiring to be architects?
That's another great question. For me, my goal is to be accessible to anyone who wants to know about architecture, anyone who wants to understand what it is to be a minority architect, anyone who wants to pursue a field in architecture. I have an open door policy for being able to just talk to kids about, my experiences. I do a lot of pro bono work in West Las Vegas. I'm sure Kelvin and Winston do as well, because that's one of the things that we have to do. We have to give back to our community. So to me, it's about planting the seed. It's about mentorship. It's about being accessible. And it's also about community engagement. Sydney, as you know, the JEDI committee, we have a pipeline program at West Preparatory School. So we teach architecture to our students twice a month, and we have about 20 students ranging from sixth grade to 12th grade. And so we're teaching them about, you know, design. We're teaching them, as Kelvin said, about drafting, about 3D renderings. There are other spin-offs from architecture, interior design. You can be a CAD operator. We have a laser scanning company, so you can do laser scanning. So there are a lot of things that they can do. It's about accessibility, giving them the opportunity to say, hey, as a non-traditional field, I've seen someone else excel in architecture, so can I. So to me, it's about accessibility to our youth.
Yeah, I think for me, I agree with Mel 100%. I think what I've done, you know, since I've become a professional is actually go out. I like going to talk to students. I've loved, you know, talking to kids, 3rd, 4th, 5th graders. As a matter of fact, I went to read at what it used to be called Kit Carson. Maybe just a couple of weeks ago to 5th graders and talk to them about architecture. High schoolers, I love talking to high schoolers who are getting ready to or thinking about what they want to do. I think maybe Mel and Winston and myself probably at a young age, certainly for me at a young age, I knew, you know, what I wanted to be, even as a teenager. So I know at the teenage years and earlier at those formidable years, students are beginning to think about what they want to do. So I think it's important that we actually go out and talk to those students. They might not necessarily know where to go. I certainly didn't when I was that age. I knew what I wanted to do. I had no idea how to accomplish it. I had no idea. I actually went to a junior college before I went away. In the junior college is when I really started to learn about more and more about architecture. Left there, like I said, went to Ball State, learned more, and eventually settled in at UNLV. But from then, I wanted to make myself, again, just like Mel, available in the sense that I want to go out, talk to them, give them my information, but also help them to chart a path, how to become an architect or an engineer or a landscape architect or interior designer. Now that I know, right, we can impart that wisdom and that knowledge on our younger generation on how to accomplish those dreams.
I got to say, one of the most amusing thing is when you're talking to the kids, the first thing they ask is how much money you make.
They do.
You know, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's not the profession for you. No, just kidding. But they're very inquisitive.
Yeah,
they're very inquisitive. Absolutely.
But, well, you know, I pre-COVID, I did regular visits to grade school classrooms, and we would talk about what they wanted to do in life. And invariably, as with young people everywhere, they immediately want to be a football player, a dancer, a basketball player, a hairdresser. And as you talk to them and start to help them to get a more realistic grasp of adulthood and the future, and say, well, how many football players are there really? How many professional football players are there? Which is a very small number. Same thing for a basketball player. And as Mel said, if you're a hairdresser, how much money are you really going to make? As opposed to spending the same amount of hours you spend out on the basketball court. What if you spend a little bit of that time in the library? What if you spend a little bit of that time learning some other skills and start to develop discipline that could lead you to a whole series of other professions, including architecture, but to help young kids understand that you build the basis to develop a foundation to widen your options. And that's what we try to impart. You want to open your options and be willing to look at other things and other professions. And invariably that helps to lead to architecture, engineering, and a lot of other technical skills and professions.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that really I find interesting is that a lot of kids don't believe in themselves.
Mhm.
They don't believe they have the ability to be an architect, engineer. And so you have to encourage them to, first of all, believe in themselves. But the way we do it in our class is we give them little tasks to do, like sketching or measurements or doing floor plans. And the look on their face when they accomplish, you know, drawing their floor plan, it's just unmeasurable. And that's what I think that we as architects have to understand, that they have to walk. We have to walk in someone else's shoes to understand some of the things that going through, because there's a lot of stuff outside of school that are happening to our kids. And we have to be aware of that. We have to be sensitive that there's things that could be maybe happening at home. There could be some of the kids not being able to have breakfast in the morning and coming to school hungry. So all of those types of things are social, economic things that we have to deal with while trying to encourage them to be in architecture field or engineering field.
Thank you, gentlemen. And I need to correct myself. So we are the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force and Committee. And when I said especially Black architects, I do mean all of the
Absolutely.
ethnicities that aren't being recognized. There's too many diverse cultures out there that are not recognized. And I just mean to say that right now we're speaking about Paul Williams, and it's very important that we recognize him in this moment, but also beyond this moment, other cultures with our architects.
Absolutely.
So for the next question, please. What are some of the design features that are distinctly identifiable works of Paul R. Williams?
Well, for me, it's that sexy curved signature staircase. It's just amazing how it just draws you into the design, into the house. Paul has also been known for bringing nature into his designs, with big windows, bay windows. So to me, those types of things are signature. The curve, which Jonna talked about, and so the high arch, the windows that bring in the natural light, that bring in the shades and the shadows. So to me, those are some of the signature styles or features that I see in his work.
For me, I think he had a very interesting palette of colors that he would use. They weren't necessarily natural tone colors. They're sort of bright. There was a few of the houses that actually had these green roofs. And so that really always caught my eye when I looked at his work. But the other thing I think that did catch my eye is the intricate detail, that he paid attention to detail. I think the current or the modern type architecture is more grandeur, where you don't necessarily need I think on his house where he just, you know, the screen where it had his letter of his last name, and he did that in some other projects. But it was not only that, but it was the detail around it, and how he paid attention to that, and how he wanted you literally need, if you went to one of his projects, you couldn't look at his project from one side and make out what it was. You'd have to investigate. You'd have to go to the north side, to the south, to the east side. You'd have to look high, and you'd have to look low. You have to go on the inside to see all the detail and the thought that he put into his project. So for me, I think that was most entertaining.
Okay, and I'll throw in there that I admire how distinctive his designs are. And you were talking earlier with Jana about his clients and what drew clients to him, particularly from the entertainment industry. And I think one of the things was that he had very distinctive approaches to design, and that his projects were not cookie cutter. And I think that was important to that particular clientele. If you're a movie star or in the industry, you don't particularly want a house that looks like everyone else's. And I think the distinctiveness of his detailing and the daringness of his designs attracted that particular caliber of client to him.
Thank you both. We have a question from the audience. The lonely onlys is something that some students who are on this call today feel close to their heart. What advice can you give to those who may still be struggling with this today?
You know what, I think that the three of us have been through this. And again, I think it's that mental thing, because I tell you, I'm always alone. I can give you this quick story. I was at a seminar in Austin, Texas, many, many years ago. So I had on a white shirt and I had on black pants, and I decided to take a break. So I went outside and stood outside in the lobby area in the porticature. And then this guy came up to me and wanted me to take his luggage out of his car. So those types of things that we go through all the time, and it's very difficult being that one person that is in the room and you're wondering, am I good enough? But what I tell everybody is that yes, you are. And you have to understand that you serve a bigger purpose. And you have to be able to take that situation and turn it in your favor by saying, hey, I'm here for a reason. I'm here because I'm qualified. And if you're able to do that, I think you then be able to understand, because sometimes people don't want to associate with you. You're in the corner, but yet you still have to function. You still have to get up every morning. You still have to, hit that grind. I think that's when the discipline comes in. So I'm a superhero. I have a theme song. My theme song is Lovely Day, because I always believe that I'm going to make that day a bright day. I'm going to make it a fun day. So it's difficult sometimes, but I think it's a mental game that you have to play to make sure that you can persevere.
I would say there's two things that I would tell that person or persons who are thinking that they are the lonely onlys. Number one, is be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Can't nobody be you like you. I think as I was coming up through the ranks, I was always, just myself. I'm a relational person. And so my focus was always on a relationship, not necessarily on getting the money right away. That's just who I am. I'm sure, Mel can vouch for that. We, sat in many conferences, conference room behind doors and talked about projects. And for me, it was about relationship. That's who I am. I'm a relational person. But number two, is now that you know that there are others out there like you, go talk to them, get in the room, sit down, have a conversation. Yeah, I'm all about, going to lunch. I love to eat. So, but believe me, Mel talks about having an open door policy. Please stop in there. And I'm sure Winston as well. We will talk to you. We will come and visit. Like I said, I love to go out and talk to students. So you won't have to necessarily go through what we went through to feel like you're lonely, only because during that time there was no one necessarily in the immediate area to go and talk to, right? There was no one to sort of lean on. And I think what we're doing is stepping forward and saying, hey, you got somebody to lean on. And take us on it, call us on it, say, that this is what you said, then I'm gonna pull your card. So I say pull that card and use it.
Absolutely. And this can be a lonely trip. It can be a lonely undertaking at times, and it can be a difficult and challenging undertaking. Even now, there's still times when I'll go into an interview room for a project with my team, and the interviewers will assume that my assistant or associate must be the principal of the firm, couldn't possibly be me. And so then you've got to do this whole education routine. So you're not really starting an entrance to the project on the same level as other teams, perhaps. But you also, just like Paul Williams, you've got to develop a toughness and dedication to what you're going to do, because above all, there's just a love of architecture that transcends all of the challenges you're going to have to face. And that's what makes it worth it, that you're doing what you truly love to do and can't imagine doing anything else in the world. And so reach out to us, reach out to your friends, reach out to others, and just, as Kelvin said, try to be as personable as you can and open yourself up to happiness.
And be adaptable and resilient as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question is, what does the panel think of hip hop architecture and its attempt to expose young people to a different vision of architecture?
I love it. Sydney, you and I have been trying to bring the hip hop architecture program to Vegas for a couple of years. Mike Ford, the founder of hip hop architecture, had this brilliant idea of marrying hip hop music and architecture together. Matter of fact, I think they have one coming up in Phoenix, where the kids are able to understand about music and how music relates to architecture, because to me it's one and the same. It evokes a feeling. There's the ups and downs of the music. So they use sound waves to determine how the buildings would be designed. And at the end of the 1 week seminar, or session, they produce a video, which I thought was really interesting. So for all of our listeners out there, please do some research on that. And I'm willing to sit down with all of you to see if we can make that happen here in Vegas, because I think that would be a great opportunity to bring the kids in through the music and teach them about architecture.
I agree. I'm with you. If we can, any new ideas that we can use to get students involved, I am all for it. I think I consider myself classically trained in architecture, and there's a rhythm to architecture. And it's designed, you think about classical architecture and you think about the ages that architecture has built upon until where it is now. There really is a rhythm in your design as it's being taught, where there's a rhythm in music, of course, right? There's this beat, especially in hip hop. I think, as Mel said, that the two that coincide very well. So, Mel, if they're ready to come here and do some stuff, man, let's do it. I'm down.
Yeah, we're looking to raise the necessary capital to bring here, but that's something that we've been working on. Absolutely, Kelvin.
That's the end of the list for the questions that we have, and there are no other comments or questions from the audience yet.
Sounds great. I really appreciate our panelists, Kelvin Haywood and
Oh,
Mel, I'm so sorry to
sorry.
interrupt.
Oh,
It
yeah.
looks like-
No, there are, I'm sorry, I see some questions. We still have time for more questions, right?
Okay, absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Carlos, did you have something to say? I'm sorry.
No, that was it. I just thought that there was other questions. Thank you so much, folks.
Okay, sorry. I didn't see the Q&A right here. We have a question here. Where can I find more historic info on the building at Rancho San Rafael?
You know what? I think that was a question for Jana to answer. Maybe we can reach out to her.
Will do. Okay. Let's see. Were there any individual architects that Paul Williams mentored that carry on his work, or did he work alone? Well, this is for Jana. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
but I think there were several architects that he mentored or actually was influenced by his style.
So there actually was. There's going to be LGA Architecture is going to host a fireside chat. Sydney, Mel, I'd like to send you that information once it's finalized. I don't have all the information, but I think everyone on here will be presently will be surprised at the speaker for this fireside chat. Again, I don't want to say too much because everything hasn't been finalized, but it'll have a lot to do with this particular question on those that were mentored. So stay tuned. More on that answer. I'll make sure I get that out to the AIA so that information for the fireside chat can be broadcast.
Thank you for that, Kelvin. There is another question. What do you think Mr. Williams would think about the modern contemporary residential design you see all over Las Vegas?
Wow, that's a good question. You want to try that, Winston?
Yeah, I think he would absolutely love it. I think he would love it that the modern farm now is almost a return to an updated translation of the mid-century modern. And so I think he would love the use of the materials we're starting to see again, the straight lines and some of the curvature. And just as Las Vegas evolves beyond the Spanish and beyond the Mediterranean and beyond some of the interpretations of architecture from other areas, and kind of starts to embrace our current modern trends, I think he would love it.
Yeah, because I think I agree with you, Winston. I think that with the lanai doors that they have now, that opens up the exterior space to the interior space, lends to have that inside outside concept Then also, I think at one time he had moved if I'm not mistaken, the dining room to the back of the house so that they were able to experience this nature, and then had the kitchen up front. So, I think a lot of the modern residential designs are starting to be aware of nature and to be aware of creating this space that you can have people sitting inside or sitting outside, but experiencing that whole design concept.
Let me see if there are more.
Folks, if I may ask this question, Sydney, if it's all right with you.
Yes.
I am curious, UNLV is one of the most diverse institutions in the nation, and it does keep going up and down ranking year after year. But oftentimes we see that there is sort of a lack of an opportunity for students to see themselves in the architectural position, right? It's not just about graduating with a degree, whether they go to another institution for a 5-year BArch, or they go to UNLV and finish their master's program. What do you think can be done to encourage students to really reach the end goal, which is truly licensure, and not just graduating for architecture school, which, as we know, UNLV does have a lot of first-generation college students, and a lot of the diversity that is represented in AIA today are mostly made up of first-generation students.
I think it has a lot to do with what we were talking about earlier and being accessible to students, to even open up doors for internships. Eric Strain, who is one of the 4th-year professors out there, I think he does a really good job of reaching out to the community and inviting professionals in, not only architects, but landscape architects, interior designers, those engineers, those that are in the profession. And I think in order to encourage them, I think what the question was, is to answer that call and to go out and speak to the students, to let them know about the firms, answer questions, not only sit on the jury to give them feedback on what they're doing, but maybe stay afterwards, talk to them about career paths, and let them know that, yeah, it certainly is obtainable. So just, I think being accessible for those students.
And also, I think it's a mindset. We have to encourage our larger architecture firms to invest in diversity. For us, we have 9 employees, and half of them are UNLV graduates. So we put our money where our mouth is. We actually hired from UNLV, and I think that's something that all of the architecture firms here in Vegas, which I know many of them do, to continue doing that and being exposed to diversity, because there's a lot of good ideas that come from a diverse design team.
And I'd love to see more students going into the pipeline. I certainly think it always helps to have a more diverse beginning class as it works its way through the program, so that you end up with more coming out the other end, and that they have a chance to really associate with firms and stick with it.
And I agree with you, Winston. I think we need a commitment from the architecture community to go into these underrepresented and underprivileged areas, and to start that pipeline, just like our JEDI committee did. I mean, we went out there and we identified a school that was at risk, and we wanted to make sure that we can provide this pipeline for students, and in UNLV or a college of their choice. Any other questions?
There are no other questions from the audience.
Carlos, we'll turn it over to you.
turn it over to James here.
Sounds
you.
good. I will, yes, thank you, Mel. So I wanted to thank everyone tonight, Janet Ireland, as well as Kelvin Hayward, Winston Henderson, Mel Green, Sydney Katz, all for the presentation as well as the discussion. Thank you. It's been a wonderful evening. A lot of education here tonight, a lot of things to really be thinking about and moving ourselves forward. Just as a reminder, everyone, you can view Jana's exhibit at the Nevada State Museum now through May 30th. Also, if you go to our website, you'll see some information on upcoming events. Just want to highlight two of those upcoming ones. The Women Building Nevada Symposium, which is on March 31st, and the 49th Annual AIA Las Vegas Golf Tournament, which is on April 24th, and it will be held this year at Dragon Ridge Golf Course. With that, I would like to just thank everyone again for their attendance. Thank you for our participants, and have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.